What is the cost of getting the things we want? When obsession is what drives us and we obtain its fruits, do we lose more than we gain? Is that loss worth it? What if we totally consume ourselves in the process of achieving that which we are obsessed with? For Darren Aronofsky, these questions permeate his stories throughout his filmography. In Pi, it's the unwinding of Max Cohen in his irrational drive to reconcile the immutable laws and rigid existence of math with the fluid and irrational existence of humanity. In Requiem for a Dream, the characters obsess over their respective and titular dreams, and ultimately over the addictions that afflict them in the process of pursuing those dreams. The Whale, an obsession over human connection and repaired relationships despite the loss of one's will to live. 2008's The Wrestler, in particular, saw Aronofsky explore the obsession behind performance art and athleticism in pursuing greatness in an environment that combines entertainment with combat. Initially conceived as a drama between a hardcore wrestler and a ballet dancer who were both consumed by their art, Aronofsky realized such a concept spread itself too thin for the sake of both ideas to captivatingly portray either one, and so focused on the wrestling storyline and set aside ballet dancing for its follow-up, his masterpiece, Black Swan. Seeing Black Swan in IMAX to celebrate its 15th anniversary was such a transcendent experience. It was never a movie designed specifically for an IMAX screen, and even in re-release, the film is presented in its original 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio, never cropped or artificially extended just for the sake of filling the extra space. And yet, IMAX was the definitive way to watch Black Swan, because of how locked on to Natalie Portman's Nina Sayers Aronofsky remains the whole time, even up against the staggering support cast. Watching this on a canvas as large as IMAX creates a transfixing, intimate experience you become completely enamored by and engrossed in. There are many films that are deep character studies like this, even great films, but man, does Black Swan ever put you in that character's head and psychosis right alongside her. If The Wrestler was a portrait of a self-destructing artist way past his prime, one you were an observer to, then in Black Swan, you become a participant. It's an almost lived experience. It's the 21st century answer to A Woman Under the Influence, only it goes a layer deeper because it's not just one scene that becomes the story of one of the other characters. It takes place entirely in the obsessed, chaotic mind of Nina and her die-hard devotion to art, from its first dream sequence to its nightmarish concluding fade to white. And for as powerful an experience as it was 15 years ago on any screen, here today in IMAX, I mean, fuck dude, Black Swan is more of a sensory experience than it ever has been. And I mean, there's something to be said about the life lived between when I first saw this film back in 2010 and watching it in 2025. I mean, I was like in high school when I first saw this film, so I don't think I was fully able to grasp and appreciate what this film was doing. I mean, for as mind-blowing as this film is, you kind of have to live some life for it to hit as hard as it does. So yeah, to say that Black Swan knocked me on my ass when I saw it in IMAX is kind of an understatement. It kind of just like completely blew my mind. It should also be noted that a lot of time has passed since I rewatched Black Swan, and so I think that also contributed to this film hitting me as hard as it did. The awe that I experienced just sitting there. There's a bit of a debate about whether or not Black Swan is or isn't horror, is or isn't a thriller, or where it sits genre-wise, and it kind of straddles the line between horror and thriller, but however you look at it, it's a film that's far more unsettling than most straightforward horror films. Like, there are images in this film, sequences that are seared into my brain that I haven't been able to forget since the first time I saw it. Nina Sayers, from the opening frames of Black Swan, is locked in a battle of inches, balancing, staving off her inner darkness with letting just enough of it through in order to achieve the perfection she's so desperate for, to be a compelling artist, to get the lead role she has spent a career chasing. Black Swan interrogates the balance between being technically proficient and being instinctual and intuitive. Creating through instinct and getting out of your own head is vital. You can auto-tune and quantize music. You can edit a film to a frame-specific rhythm. You can take every last movement in a dance routine and execute it with nigh robotic precision. That is neither a good or bad thing in its own right, but you can lose the human element of it. The self-destructive, obsessive pursuit of perfection in a craft you devoted your entire being to, and yet are held back from by an inability to let life in, to let experiences inform your art, is an insanely relatable thing for any creative. It's easy to master the mechanics, but there are some things that go beyond that. You have to make the audience believe and feel what it is you're doing. That's what separates the greats from everyone else. Not everyone is capable of that, and even for the ones who are, what does it cost them? I think a lot of creatives can become so technically proficient that they over-rely on their embedded skills to achieve greatness without really finding the human flawed beauty in their art. This is Nina's biggest flaw. She's so precise, so technically masterful, that her performances are almost a perfect tutorial than a living, breathing interpretation of art. This is what Thomas tries to get through to her about, to appeal to the human side of Nina, to be uninhibited and free and a fully formed person on stage, to let her flawed and vulnerable Black Swan out while delivering the immaculate, precise beauty that is her White Swan. And yeah, I mean, he goes about it in probably the most fucked up way possible, but you know what? There's like a kernel of truth in there, a little bit. Maybe if he wasn't just a creep. Nina, in turn, is someone who seeks external validation because of an insecurity, because she holds herself back. She has a lack of confidence even though she easily possesses the skills necessary to become one of the great dancers. She lives in comfort, coddled, but also controlled by her mom, who's created a padded living space for her due to the trauma you can infer she endured as a female dancer at Nina's age. There's also the added effect of Nina having some success, but not quite enough to live in New York City on her own yet, and therefore having to give up a certain amount of independence in her life. This is only compounded by her mother's controlling, obsessive behavior. It's the mistakes her mother made that led her to giving up her career, that she feels she can correct by molding every aspect of Nina's life, which instead ensures that the child repeats the same mistakes of the parent. It's because of all of this that Nina lives under a belief that a certain amount of suffering is necessary to be a great artist. Thankfully, you don't have to suffer in order to become a technically proficient craftsperson attaining the tools, knowledge, and skills to be the best of the best thanks to our good friends at Brilliant. You've heard me talk about Brilliant on the channel before, and for good reason. They're my favorite platform for learning new skills that are tailored to the way you retain information. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver through interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, you name it, building your understanding of concepts from the ground up. Crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Google, and more, Brilliant's lessons are designed to develop your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not rote memorization. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts such as electric and digital circuits and gear systems, physical structures, and more. So what are you waiting for? Give learning a try. Give that big brain a workout by going to brilliant.org/filmspeak, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description below. Brilliant's also giving our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant, which is pretty sweet, if I do say so. That's brilliant.org/filmspeak, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description, get that sweet 20% off an annual premium subscription, and thank you so much to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. There's also a motif of fading beauty, of fighting against one's expiration date as a performer, specifically a female performer. Nina's mother lost a handle on her own career, forced out of it. She moved into painting portraits, her next artistic chapter, but as the reality of her life sunk in, as she gained more chronological distance from her career and passion, her paintings became grotesque and ugly and seemed to only decay with each subsequent canvas she takes paint to. All of her paintings seem to be disturbing and distorted portraits of her own daughter, which kind of reflects herself. None of them are flattering, and many of them portray Nina as a sort of eldritch horror. Beth, who was a star dancer in Thomas's ballet company, is forced into retirement as she ages out to the consortium of younger, more physically capable dancers. Nina sees this as writing on the wall of having to meet her goals within a deadline. And while it's true that one cannot withstand the physical strain and acrobatic requirements of ballet forever, by demanding of yourself a rigid adherence to success within a set time frame, you lose sight of the artistry and passion. Nina stops making her art for the fulfillment of herself, and it's not entirely her fault. It's a byproduct of the culture of her industry, one which is frankly patriarchal and based to a not insignificant degree on the satisfaction and pleasure of men. Validation in a man's world leads to women fighting with one another. Lily is a perfect counterpoint to Nina, because Nina immediately feels competition from her, but Lily is there as a friend. Yes, Lily wants the lead role in Swan Lake. I mean, every dancer in the company does, but she doesn't see Nina as her enemy. She's not trying to compete with or threaten Nina. She's only trying to better herself in the hopes that her natural talent will speak for itself. Nina is just a touch above Lily in her abilities, and that's all it really took for her to land the part. heart, but she can't even see that. Even after she gets what she wants, she still thinks she's not good enough, and she still sees Lily as a threat. Lily is the kind of person Nina wants to be, desperately wants to be, but is incapable of being. And it's not because Nina is a bad person, it's the path her circumstances and surrounding influences center on. And it's the mindset her inner Black Swan is tricking her into believing. At various points in the story, you can see the catharsis Nina's mother gets from her paintings, a necessary outlet to cope with her baggage. Yes, the works are arguably disturbing and grotesque. Yes, there are emotional outbursts we witness as she's composing them. Nina's mother is far from being an emotionally well-regulated or healthy person, and we see how that negatively affects someone like Nina, causes them to be wound extremely tight. But nevertheless, in constantly making art, in literally throwing her creativity onto her canvas, rather than obsessing over flawless beauty and technical precision, we can see it as a parallel to how Nina's mother is on a far less self-destructive path than Nina herself. Ballet should be the same healthy output for Nina, but she's too obsessed with being the best and comparing herself to others that she neglects the most important aspect of art, it being an outlet for the person creating it. As a result, Nina's passion works to further destroy her rather than enrich her. Black Swan retells the fable of Swan Lake in a beautifully compelling yet tragic way. It's about the balance between the white swan and the black swan inside of her, the literal dance she does. The white swan is the purity of her talent and artistry, the technical brilliance, the drive to make art for art's sake. It's the core of any artist, and it should be both the bedrock and the primary piece of us that drives our creation. But the black swan in us, in Nina, the voice saying she's not good enough, or her impulses and desires she's neglected, while these things are not particularly healthy and are a darkness that pull at us, they're also deeply human. The goal is to acknowledge the existence of the black swan within us without letting it fully consume us. It's a catch-22 in that Nina's inner black swan is whatever pulls her into a darker place and away from the purity of the art she makes, and yet it's also the element that makes technically brilliant art human and captivating on an emotional level. It's a balance. Nina's white swan is her gift, her joy in performing and delighting audiences, while her black swan is telling her that nothing short of being the best is acceptable. If it's not the lead points and the accolades and being better than Lily or Beth or anyone else, then what's the point? In Swan Lake, the black swan deceives the white swan into committing suicide. Nina Sayers, a white swan in and of herself, is pushed into her own self-destruction by the black swan in her mind. It's an enthralling parallel to the push-pull between addiction and depression, the thrill of chasing the high contrasting with the brutal reality and physical decline of the come-down. This is, of course, another recurring motif among Aronofsky's films. I mean, my god, the man made Requiem for a Dream. It's quite frankly the DNA of a lot of his works. However, here, he approaches addiction and depression from a substanceless point of view. There aren't any literal drugs involved here. Well, other than when Lily spikes Nina's drink and gives Nina a hallucinogen-filled wild night. I mean, that's like the only literal use of substance here. And so Nina isn't an addict in the oft-thought-of sense, but she embodies all the traits of one. Her vice is her craft, and Black Swan deconstructs what happens when artistry consumes the artist. It can be as damaging as hardcore drugs, only Nina's not getting any sort of release from it. It's all a toxic relationship with her occupation, without the high, and the only time she gets the high is at the very end, when she harms and kills herself in order to feel it. And look, just quick aside, we all know this thing is a masterpiece by this point, but the last 15 minutes or so of Black Swan is some of the most breathtaking, transcendent cinema of all time. I mean, it left me in absolute awe. It is just everything is operating on such a high level. I mean, it really is this perfect synthesis of technical proficiency and just human catharsis, not just in terms of the dance, but in terms of the filmmaking and the catharsis that comes out of it. It is just... oh my god. Seeing that in IMAX, I mean, I thought I was gonna lose it. And then when the audience starts erupting, it is like, wow. Oh my god. I can't sing the praises of that experience enough, specifically the climax of it. It's also important to add that the self-harm aspect of this film is really profound. It's horrifying and tragic, and the way in which it subtly sneaks up on Nina is really unsettling. It gets under your skin, but it's also compelling the way it's explored here and the way Natalie Portman conveys it. The way someone wound so tight slowly starts to fracture and doesn't even necessarily realize it, but they tolerate it. We tolerate her degradation because it's in pursuit of something great. And the film essentially asks, at what point do you stop justifying the neurosis? At what point does it become too much? At what cost? For Nina Sayers, there doesn't seem to be a limit. For us watching her, for most anyone in her in-universe life, they see the limit. They ache to stop her, for her to stop herself, if nothing else. As an audience, we want better for her. She's a good person and a magnificent talent, but ultimately, as with how an addict ultimately has to be their own biggest advocate, Nina is the one in control. She's the only one who can fully stop herself or commit to a healthier path. That ultimately is the tragedy at the heart of Black Swan, laid threadbare onto the canvas of our cinema screens as her story fades up into a brilliant white. Black Swan was a pretty resounding sensation back when it released in 2010. The film made over $300 million when it was released, more than 20 times its budget, and amidst a sea of critical acclaim, Natalie Portman won one of the most rightly deserved Oscars probably ever. It's also functioned as a rewarding slow burn of a movie. Darren Aronofsky's masterpiece rewards rewatches. Its delicately unfolding story landing arguably even harder punches when you know where things are going. Yes, it's a shocking and disturbing story, but it's also one of the most real and captivating cinematic portraits of what being an artist is like. Seeing it in such vivid, massive detail in IMAX was almost overwhelming, but it also reaffirmed to me why art matters. Movies, music, dance, painting, writing, it all matters. It's what makes life rich and worth living. Sometimes the pursuit of artistry can be vicious and defeating, but the experience of art itself is beautiful. Black Swan may be a tragedy when you look at it as a chronicle of Nina Sayers, but it ultimately expresses a love and hopefulness for art at large and the lengths that people go to produce it. That, alongside one of the greatest lead performances ever put to screen, is why Black Swan is still compelling us 15 years on.